This video is from our good friend, and I do actually mean a good friend, for somebody who's very kind to us and, you know, is always very, always been a great presence to us. That is Gary, good old TheHotCross's. We've reacted to quite a few of their videos before, always very, very good and well stated. Kind of frames them like essays. We found out the last video, it's because we were both teachers, so that's why we kind of like jive with the same brain. So that's really fun. But we do be loving Gary, so make sure now more than ever that you hit that link that just showed up in the chat, or the one that is in the description below if you're watching us on YouTube, in order to like and subscribe to this channel, because they are very, very kind to us and they deserve that love and support of the official release. So this video in specific is talking about what Texas Chainsaw Massacre desperately needs, which is a game I got to be part of the demo for, which I found very, very fun. We've been looking forward to playing on the side alongside BBB. Obviously, you don't want to overbalance something, especially something like a party game like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Gary always very much focuses on the fun aspect of games, but keeping the party aspect of games. So I'm interested to see what they want to change specifically. So, yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Don't.
Hello.
Hi.
It's time to discuss one of the most highly anticipated games.
Oh, I like the new art.
Especially for anyone who loves the asymmetrical horror genre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre game, developed by Gun Media. Between the dates of the 25th of May and the 30th of May 2023, we were given access to the technical test,
which was very fun.
Players
I loved it to
experience
death.
a first look at the gameplay, characters, and some of the game's environments. Today we're going to be discussing what, in my opinions, were
It was like a visual novel character,
the potential weaknesses of the
you
game
know?
in its current form. To do this, we'll look at the core gameplay loop itself, some of the key gameplay mechanics, we'll be discussing the voice comm functionality in some detail, and some issues that I currently have, and suggest adjustments and improvements to potentially alleviate those concerns.
Cook and Bubba were my favorite to play.
One thing that I feel needs to be stressed.
Wasn't much
This
of a
was a
hitchhiker
technical
person.
test. Generally speaking, these are designed to test core functionality, stability, and performance, not game balance. The test build was a bare bones version, with many missing elements, such as matchmaking with friends, perks, progression, other characters, maps, and likely more. We won't be discussing balance because it was only a 4-day test, not long enough to judge that element, nor is it the full game, so again, feels very silly to discuss that element at this point, although didn't stop some. But anyway, let's discuss what the
there's
core
a lot of people that are really like, nerf this, buff this, nerf this, buff this, and it's like, it's not that kind of game, bro. This isn't Dead by Daylight where we're trying to make like this like honed experience here. Like, this is a party game. This is just turn on and mess around. Like, this is a different environment. You can't do that here.
Play was in a bit more detail.
Lockpicking girl, yeah, Connie, yeah. That was one of the things I found
The
annoying.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre game,
But that was
or
honestly
TCM
a
for
lot of
short,
that
is a
had to do with your team
multiplayer
and
asymmetrical
how they
horror
played as well.
game. Asymmetric games rely on players taking on different gameplay roles, often with associated different views of the game world and different input modalities. In terms of TCM, this means two opposing sides which feature different numbers of players and different abilities and goals. First, there is the victim side. 4 victims find themselves in the basement of the Slaughter family house, who must seek
I will say it kind of has the inverted problem. It kind of has the inverted problem that DBD has, where, like, you know, having one bad random screws you over on Survivor. Having one bad random on the killer side kind of screws you over. If your cook is not feeding you information, you guys kind of lose. Or if your hitchhiker's like just doesn't like actually like properly like set up all the exits and protect the exits, you just kind of lose. So it's kind of interesting that the killer side in this game is the one where you know, solo queue is probably going to be the sucky end, and not, because like victim, you can kind of just do your own thing. You know, it's every man for himself, realistically. So I think it's interesting that's vice versa.
evade detection to escape through one of the 4 varying exit points, each having their own unique abilities, but mostly working independently to find their way out. They can crouch, walk, and run with limited stamina. Further to this, they must find lock-picking tools to open secure doors and bone fragments to disarm traps, all while staying out of sight. They can utilise crawl spaces, gaps in the walls, or obstacles to evade, slow down, or lose their pursuers. With the goal in mind of escape through one of the 4 exit points,
Some
often
weirdos,
require them
yeah.
to disable the generator,
Yeah.
switch off the car battery, power the fuse box, or provide pressure to the gas-powered door. A relatively simple core loop to evade the family, loot for items, and escape. The opposing side is known as the family. Featuring 3 members of the Slaughter family, they start separated and each provide unique support and abilities to prevent the victims from escaping. They can each attack their targets, unlock and relock doors, search hiding spots, and sprint for a time, with each having varying but limited stamina. Of the family, first there is Leatherface, the brute of the group. Able to
I love Leatherface. Just running in the basement and putting somebody down super early. It's so funny. So funny.
Next, there is the more hunter-like role with the hitchhiker. Beginning outside the house, it is his role to
He's the one I like the least. He's not really as bad. It just wasn't my thing.
Activating the car battery, and able to set up snares which are akin to bear traps. After this, he becomes somewhat the strongest pursuer as well, able to use crawl spaces and gaps like the victims can. He is only blocked by obstacles, needing Leatherface to assist in those situations. Finally, there is the support role, the cook. Starting inside the house, they can lock 3 doors with padlocks, giving an extra layer to slow down
I got
the
you,
victims.
homie. I'll give you the info.
They are set up to excel at feeding grandpa blood, which can provide intermittent aura reading for victim locations, and eventually
although I play support in a lot of games, so that kind of makes sense.
On top of this, they can use their hearing to locate victims as well.
Yeah, I'm always either like support or DPS, so I guess that kind of makes sense. A lot of games I play, their team games, I do support and DPS, so I guess Cook and Bubba makes sense for me.
They are, however, the weakest in pursuits, being unable to follow victims through crawl spaces, gaps, or obstacles. He is there to pincer attack with his family more than anything. The family core loop is fairly straightforward on paper too. Protect the exits, feed grandpa, and kill the victims. So that's the core gameplay. There is a lot more detail though. For example, victims can escape their pursuers up above by jumping down holes back into the basement. They sacrifice their progress for safety, and the journey begins anew. But if I list every mechanic, this video will go on for too long. But hopefully this gives a rough idea of the goals and playstyle of the two sides. Now with that in mind, let's discuss what was good about the game.
A lot was good about the game. It was very fantastic as a party game.
So let's start with the victim gameplay. The most striking thing that I really appreciate about the game from this point of view was the atmosphere.
That's true.
Creeping through the basement in the initial stages of the round is tense. Hearing Leatherface's chainsaw revving in the background before he powers past, barely missing you in the corner of his eye, feels amazing. And the moments that follow leave a lasting atmospheric feeling. The tension and horror within this stage of the game is immense, and feeling lost in the environment's twists and turns, searching for a tool to help you escape the basement feels awesome. If you do somehow manage your way out of the basement, you find yourself in a more open and yet more terrifying situation, as you now have to deal with an area plagued by the cook's locked doors and the hitchhiker's snares as you sneak through the next stage of this beautifully crafted environment. Finally, there is the high-octane pressure of seeing light at the end of the tunnel, as you disable the car battery and rush to open the gate to escape, or narrowly flee to the street with Leatherface revving behind you as you worry the cook is looking to repower that generator. The only recent game I can compare this to in terms of atmospheric feeling is Outlast
I have played
Trials,
that. I'm not too
where
into this. It's alright though.
You find yourself pressured by monstrous individuals and must rely on stealth through much of the game. But with TCM, those are not AI hunting you, but real players. I will also add that the feeling of agency is also incredible. Agency is the satisfying power to take meaningful action and see the results of our decisions and choices. I think where I realised this was such a powerful tool in TCM was honestly when searching for a bone fragment. The sound-based minigame of trying not to be too loud at the cost of speed gives the player choice. If I hear a member of the family nearby, I can make a split-second decision. Hope they haven't heard me, stop, or quickly grab my bone fragment and run. This situation can occur when opening crawl spaces, or even when lockpicking doors. It feels great, and again, leaves the victim player feeling at the mercy of their own choices and the Slaughter family's pursuit. This feeling of agency is prevalent throughout the game, such as the way you seek to escape, which could leave you following and working with your fellow victims.
I've said this in a different video, but I think one of the things that I always liked about this in terms of the test was like, I have so many different ways of escape that like I can do my own thing. Like I can do whatever minigame I want or prefer to get out, right? Like, of course, as a team, we can like try to coordinate to do 1 or 2 specific ones. But realistically, if I just like escaping through the front door, I can just always try to escape through the front door. If I just like going through the basement exit, and that's just my thing as a player, and that's what I like to do, I can just do that. Like, it kind of like removes that aspect of like DBD where like the only way to escape is doing the gens. So if you, it's really ride or die on if you like doing gens or not, right? And that sort of thing, you know, like you have multiple options, which makes it feel like more personal in like a fun way, you know.
Or abandoning them altogether, opting to look out for number 1. Unlike other asymmetrical games where you are often reliant on your teammates, with TCM this isn't the case with victim gameplay. In 1992,
It is for the
Carol J.
family
Clover
gameplay,
coined
though.
a phrase known as the final girl. This relates to a final female survivor in a piece of horror media. For example, Sally Hardesty from A Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Laurie Strode from Halloween, a modest but strong character who defies the odds and survives. A powerful trope in horror, and regardless of the gender of the character you play, you feel like you're the final character in a horror film. Hearing your teammates perish in the background as you flee for your
Dude,
life.
it's so funny when you're playing a Texas Chainsaw match and like Bubba gets somebody really early. It like casts like a little moody shadow over the rest of the match. You're just like, oh. Like when Bubba puts somebody down early, you're like, it's a lot more intense when that happens.
Only to sometimes find out you were just a side character all along and won't be in the sequel yourself. But the feeling remains the same until that point. That feeling of being like you're in a horror movie is fantastic. In stark contrast to the powerlessness of playing victim is the family role. Here, you menacingly pursue your victims, trying to guess what they might attempt to do next to escape your clutches. Each role feels somewhat different, as none can pursue a victim in quite the same way. As Leatherface, you immediately feel like the biggest threat in the room. You can menacingly rev your chainsaw as you block off crawl spaces, and you know full well that if you find a victim in a bad spot, you're probably going to kill them quickly. Setting snares up as the hitchhiker and hearing someone fall victim to one makes you feel like a genius. One step
I've
ahead
won
of
games
them,
off of these
whilst
straps
also
before.
being adept
I
at
did this
chases.
again.
I also found it weirdly satisfying to double lock important doors as the cook, knowing I am another wall to be passed by them. Being able to listen carefully for those victims being particularly sneaky gives you a feeling of usefulness to your team, despite struggling in a chase yourself.
Which I love
When
doing.
the family work together to corner and trap someone, it really adds to that family vibe.
Oh, it's
and definitely gives
nothing feels better than like a family team coming together. Like, oh, brother, it's so nice. I told this story almost every time I talk about this game. Yeah, I had one game where I was playing Cook. I had this Chad Bubba who was just like, he didn't have voice comms, but he was just like constantly typing in the in-game chat, like everything he was doing. And I listened to this guy. We were on the slaughterhouse map, and I was listening as Cook, and I heard a person over in the right building near that exit gate over there to the right. And I was like, oh, they're in there. I hear them in there. And the dude just like books it, just like straight up, just like a 30-ton train, just. And I just see all the noisemakers. Anytime anything happens, door open, noisemaker, and then somebody dies. And I'm like, chef's kiss. It was an event. I loved that so much.
a greater sense of teamwork between the two sides. The visuals of the game are incredible. The environments, particularly the family house being an almost identical replication of the original 1974 film's version, is a terrifying joy to walk through. The
Slaughterhouse not
slaughterhouse
as much.
as well features a haunting
I
cattle pen.
don't
you
like
manage
this
your way
side of
up
the
to the
house as
basement.
much.
Both maps are beautifully crafted.
I think the slaughterhouse is like very windy, and it feel like okay. So like, whereas like the Sawyer house feels like I'm playing in an actual location, like a real place, and I'm just playing in it. The slaughterhouse feels like a video game map, I don't know what it is about it. It just feels like it doesn't feel very fun to play on. It just feels like I'm in a little video game playground. It doesn't feel very immersive.
They all look great as well, especially their animations. The amount of personality behind even the walk animations of the family members.
I think, yeah, it doesn't have a menacing tone like the house, and also doesn't have like any like it doesn't feel like the pointer is like centralized, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not really any like huge, very like huge landmarks that really stand out. There's like the tower in the middle, and that's like it. Everything else is a rickety old building number 2, rickety old building number 3. It's like it's a very like featureless map when it comes to like, and when a map is featureless, it's kind of hard to like not hard to traverse, but it's kind of like it's kind of hard to traverse because you're looking for those landmarks to know where to go and what to do. So, yeah,
is incredible. They've really captured the spirits of the characters. There is also this constant cinematic vibe to the whole experience, adding to that horror movie feeling. When a victim drives down the hole back into the basement, or is forced to desperately jump through a window to escape, it feels like a very pivotal moment in the exchange. With the finale of a desperate escape or unfortunate demise, it all adds to the atmosphere. Speaking of atmosphere, the audio is solid as well, with the chainsaw echoing through the basement really adding to the tension.
Yep.
The environmental sounds in the background aren't overpowering and allow the game to be quiet when it needs to be without being silent. The tension is built upon when the chase ensues with an engaging score, and the voice lines of the family teasing their prey, or the victim's self-assurance, all makes the game feel increasingly immersive. So if I was to summarise what I consider to be TCM's greatest strength so far, I would suggest a relatively straightforward core loop,
Race
at
to
least on the
Escape,
surface,
I believe
making it
4.
accessible for an audience to enjoy,
3 or 4.
but features enough depth for the matches to not feel too similar to each other with the varying escape points. Desperately trying to lose a member of the family once spotted, or mercilessly pursuing a
There's the
victim
gate,
is
there's the
exhilarating,
basement.
and with the exit points as they are, can make for some unique situations. The atmosphere of almost every element of the game feels articulately directed towards providing a true horror-fueled experience, particularly for the victim role. Though despite how excellent the game can feel, there are lulls at times too. But before we discuss those, I would like to discuss
that's one
my
of
main
the
issue with technical
that's like the only issue I had with the game. It was like when I was playing family and like the victims were being super stealthy and our cook just sucked. Like it was just us sitting around doing nothing. Like we were collecting blood for grandpa, but when you're not hitting the victims and you're just picking up from the pails and cook's supposed to be the one collecting the blood and he's not doing it, like you end up sitting there for an egregiously long amount of time just with your fingers up your butt doing nothing, and it's super boring. Like it's just like I would rather be doing anything else than sitting and going, there's got to be some way to like mitigate tracking if your cook is bad, because it's right now it just seems like tracking relies on like ride or die by like having a cook in your team that's good or cook in your team that's bad. So like what do you do? Like of course you get to pick your character in the live version. Like what if you don't even have a cook on your team? Like what do you do then? It's like things I gotta answer.
Test itself. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre game technical test did not feature a way to play with your friends, so you had to rely on strangers to be your teammates as both victim and family member. This was an excellent opportunity to test out how the game played without voice-directed coordination. Now, as stated prior, victim gameplay, although being able to benefit from some open communication with your teammates, is not reliant on it. You can play solo and still have an enjoyable enough experience. However, family plays a little differently. As a member of the family, you have a different set of strengths and weaknesses at your disposal, most prevalent with the cook character. He can listen intently and locate victims sneaking through the environment, but lacks the ability to effectively catch victims alone. He is a fine example of a character that relies on comms to relay information, such as the location of a victim, so he can work with others to pincer them into a dangerous situation. Fortunately, voice communications are built into the game. Studies into preferences in communication have found that the majority of people prefer communication through voice comms rather than text. Also finding that voice communication leads to a greater sense of teamwork generally.
Like,
However,
I don't prefer voice comms, but like text comms just takes forever. That's the issue. Like I'd rather not talk to anybody, but like it's just that text comms takes too long. That's the only thing.
It cannot be overlooked that a percentage of players would sooner not engage in voice communications, especially with strangers. A study looking into online communication suggests that conversation is often a means to police the boundaries of what is socially acceptable, and can gain certain interlocutors social rewards and other social sanctions. What this means is that people will use their voice to encourage behaviours they deem acceptable and shun that they do not. And here lays the problem. The trouble is the internet is full of bad opinions and even worse attitudes at times.
We talked about that
especially
earlier.
when provided the veil of anonymity. Another study looking at adolescent masculinity in online spaces found high school adolescents participated in an interactional process where they labelled fellow students as a generic insult to point out non-masculine acts to police masculinity. I would suggest this mentality is often prevalent within the online space, even beyond this high school age, and leads to online harassment to any group that one can.
Most of the people that I run into who are like angry in the after chat, me in the after chat, and I go and I check their profiles and they have like their age listed, they're adults, man. They're adults. They're adults, man. They're not kids. They're fully grown people being this awful and nasty over a video game. Really disappointing. Really disappointing.
Othering is the idea of the construction and identification of the self or in-group and the other or out-group in mutual opposition by attributing relative inferiority and or radical alienness to the other out-group. The simplest way to give an example of this is how some men act towards women in online spaces. In 2022, Statista accounted women to make up somewhere around 48% of the broader gaming community. Interestingly, in 2008, a paper by Nick Yee suggested that women only represented 15% of the MMO landscape, even though Statista of the same year suggested 40% of the gaming community identified as female. So why the disparity? Yee goes on to suggest many female players have learned that it is dangerous to reveal your real-life gender in MMOs, because they will be branded as incompetent and constantly propositioned. In other words, they must either accept the male subject position silently or risk constant discrimination and harassment if they reveal that they are female.
Yeah, you know, when I play Siege with my friends and I play with female friends, they don't use their mics for the most part. Like, for the most part, they just don't. Because they know if they open their mouth, they're going to be harassed for the rest of the game, and they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with that at all. Happens in Valorant, yeah, it's very prominent in the FPS, like, genre. Very, very prominent. But in games in general, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, people, particularly men in online spaces, can be pretty disgusting. I've witnessed it myself, and I suspect many of you have as well. Therefore, my suggestion is that TCM must include a ping system for their players as an alternative to voice comms. It's a matter of accessibility for me. Not only do not all players want to communicate via voice, but open comms in the modern world is not always a safe environment for players. I think this will be a net benefit to the solo queue experience, meaning a person will not be required to play with only their friends, but also allow the game to appeal to a broader market whilst making little impact on the core gameplay itself. Outlast Trials is a great example again of how effective a ping system can be. That's the biggest thing I would like to see adjusted in the game, so I wanted to give it ample discussion. But there are a few other slight things I'd like to see improved upon as well.
Not a victim. I don't think so on family either.
Again, this was just a technical test. It's very possible all of these issues might not be issues in the full game, when features are sharpened and finished. But all feedback is good feedback, right? Now, prior to this, I stated it as a positive that the victims don't rely on each other to survive. Every character can feel like the final girl in any given match. However, there is one facet of this that feels like it could be fine-tuned a little more. There is a distinct lack of interaction between victim teammates as it stands, outside of some voice lines when they're in close proximity. You can heal each other, but there really isn't much outside of that from a game mechanic perspective. Having said that, if you utilise the built-in voice comm system, you can share information and help guide your teammates to safety. Or perhaps you can direct a Leland to stun an attacking family member to save your life. But this is more user-driven rather than game-driven. I would like to see more reason to stick together with your teammates occasionally. It's very possible this will already exist in the full game, as we are currently unaware of the full breakdown of how perks will work. It is very possible some perks might support nearby teammates in close proximity, such as with unlocking doors faster as an example. I won't go over this again in too much detail, but I do feel family members are incredibly reliant on voice comms as it stands.
They are.
Which, as mentioned in the prior section, might put off some people from playing that side. I believe the best way to allow everyone to be able to enjoy and participate in this role is a ping system. This would also bring greater sense of balance between teams which choose to use voice comms and those that do not. There are some pacing issues in the game at times, particularly in the later sections of the game. Once victims are dropping like flies, you can sometimes find the game to become fairly stagnant as the final one or two victims become sneakier and slower in movement, leaving the family to just feed Grandpa, which isn't particularly exciting at the moment either.
It's so boring.
Perhaps greater blood rewards for killing a victim to help power Grandpa up to level 5 could be one way to avoid this situation. Victim can feel somewhat deflating when you are quickly killed early on in a round. Honestly, I don't think there is a fix for this. I would only recommend an easy way to quickly search into a new lobby, much like Fortnite can feel. I believe the iframes of protection when a victim uses a crawl space can feel a little generous, making some loops unstoppable.
Yeah, true.
But again, with proper communication tools, the teamwork can help resolve this issue. And a really small gripe, I know it adds to the cinematic vibe, but the Grandpa waking up cutscene feels a little disruptive to the gameplay flow at times. These next 2 points are very much, I know it's a technical test, but still worth mentioning. I would be very keen to see a much more fleshed out and developed tutorial system. Wordy explanations are never as good as doing, so an interactive tutorial could be a good move here. But it is tough because there are a lot of mechanics to explain for both sides. Tutorials are difficult and often underappreciated by players, but I think it's something that Gun need to focus on for the full release. Some minor user interface issues, such as the options menu being located in the lobby area. Hopefully we can see that move to the main menu as well.
Yeah.
A lot of this
I
stuff
found that
relates to user
confusing.
experience, and the technical test was likely not focused on this element, so I have full faith that these issues will and might have already been addressed in the current development build. The technical test was a massive success. The gameplay generates some of the most polished horror aesthetic I have experienced in any asymmetrical horror setting.
In a long time.
I'll be honest,
Yeah.
I was not a fan of Friday the 13th, the game,
Really?
which was also developed by Gun, which in
I like
fairness never got to see its full
It's like a
potential.
cozy comfort game.
But
but
this
yeah.
game has such a strong foundation already. I know there are some calls for the game to include silly dances like Friday the 13th had. I am not one of them. I really love the horror feel that the game has produced. The visuals and sound design are superb, and every element brings the world together. Every detail works in cohesion to generate an immersive experience.
Mm-hmm.
They have also already highlighted some upcoming adjustments the team is working on since the technical test, some of which I myself had some concerns over, which is a promising sign that they are listing and plan on being open.
Friday I never got super into, but it was always a cozy game for me. Like I always load up a game of Jason and just chill out, you know? Always found it to be a cozy vibe game.
About the direction and changes they plan for the game's future. Working in collaboration with Kim Henkel, original characters are also going to be added into the world, such as the upcoming family members Johnny and
Johnny
Sissy.
seems cool.
This means the
I'm
game is
excited
not
for Johnny.
strangled by its license, but will be able to flourish alongside it. Who knows? We may even see the expansion into more locations and characters in the franchise if enough support is there.
True.
I'm honestly very excited, but I will say it one more time. I desperately would like to see some form of ping system introduced. As for me, it's an accessibility issue. Although I appreciate that the developers have a vision for the game, I hope this is one suggestion they can try to accommodate. Phew! I managed to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game without mentioning that other asymmetrical horror game. But what do you guys think? Would a ping system make you more likely to buy this game on release? What did you love most about the technical test? Is there any other improvements you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you again to Gun Media for giving me access to play the technical test, and I look forward to playing the full version on August 18th. Thanks for watching,
so
everyone,
far away
and have a
still.
great day.
Stop. Yeah, like I agree. I like that's something that I would not even just. I mean, you know, it's like the reliance on comms, like the accessibility of comms is nice, but the reliance on it, especially when it comes to the family side, has always been like the thing that I was actually like distasteful of. So that I completely agree. 1000% agree. Yeah, 1000% agree with that. In addition, for those very serious reasons of, you know, helping people avoid harassment, it's very, very important to have people, you know, obviously a ping system will never replicate voice comms in strength, but you can get close, and you should try to get it as close as possible. You really should. So I 1000% agree. 1000% agree.